So a4 is played, a6, rook to b7, and b5 is made fairly easily. Rook to a2, and Jackson is invading the whites' second rank, John's second rank, and it's clearly where usually you want the rooks to invade, and John's forced with a battle over the c2 square now, because it's the only thing that really holds this rook from really munching the g and the h pawns. g3. The threat here is rook to d3, and if something, like king moves wherever, excuse me, the e3 pawn will hang. So John is forced to take, and if king c3, then rook takes h2. So John, as I stated, has to block on c2. Bishop b3. Maintaining the pin, h4. So generally useful move here. John's going to need to create a passer on the king side, and also he's getting the pawn off the second rank. All right, so the threat, the threat was on the knight, obviously, and there's discovery options available here, with knight to e2. So excuse me, knight to d4. He does have to give up the e3 pawn, though. And I think this is a end game that should be clearly won. And you see a lot of the reason why it's won is the power of the black bishop, and also obviously black invading on the second rank. So I won't go through a lot of these variations, just because the time because it could end up being a really long analysis, which I'm trying to keep short. I will say that this endgame would have, two versus, rooks on the board, rook versus rook, 2 pawns versus 3 pawns. I think it's theoretically drawn if the white king were more involved, were in a better position. But right now, clearly, the king isn't in a good position, and therefore black should be able to win this. John, John, after clearly, if he's got to prevent something dealing with rook f4, attacking both of the pawns. But if he plays rook f4 here, then rook h3 and g5 will have to be played anyway. If obviously if h5, then the pawn falls, the h pawn. So John goes ahead and just plays g5 right away, and rook f5, which is a very strong move. If rook takes rook, Well, I'll just play this out here. Rook takes rook. The king can't get over in time, and black will win the pawn. And then opposition doesn't really matter in these. Um, well, I mean, black has opposition anyway, but you have to remember that when there's an extra pawn here, even if white could hold opposition here, black can always just move a pawn to win a tempo and get opposition back. So king c4 is pretty much forced. King c5. And I'm pretty sure I won't count through everything, but after take, I don't think that because black's king is out in front of the pawn, this should be, this is just a theoretically one end game. I think that taking on g5 should have also worked as well for the same idea, that if he has, even though John can get out in front, whatever, I'm just playing moves here, but typically, sorry, black to move. Typically, this if it was just king and pawn here versus king, this is a draw because king over, and that would be stalemate. But because the extra pawn, he can just move the pawn, and the king's forced to flee to f2, and then king h2 is played. So you can see how having that extra pawn really matters in these, and thus it's why they say it's a theoretical draw. I think Jackson could have just easily taken there and had a real simple win. King f7, king d5. So John's trying to block the king out. But even if John plays king e5 here, but even if king c5, black can keep going until until the king gets too far away from the pawn, and black would be able to queen. So the opposition to the a file doesn't work because at some point white gets too far away. So John flees to the g6 pawn. He's going to try to take it and win a race. Check. And the king, this is another theoretical win. Right here, actually, John is forced into mate. But a queen versus pawn in this scenario should be, should just be won if black displays the proper technique. So John does lose the game. Cute little mate at the end. So ring 1 up for Colorado and a 0 for New Mexico. And we've had 6 decisive results. You can see clearly we're not playing drawish chess anywhere. I think this game was, speaking as a captain, was pretty disappointing, just because we had a simple tactic missed very early in the game that would have won a piece. And Jackson clearly, once John had some attacking chances, um, didn't quite pan out. Was probably equal, but Jackson played a very, very sound endgame. I mean, clearly, I'm not, with any endgame like this, you can go on for days analyzing it. But as far as I could tell, it was really, really sound. And so hats off to him. But we'll look at the next video. We'll look at my game versus Mitesh. And that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you learned a thing or two. And have a good day and happy chess.